Hey guys, let's play Corellian Spike. The goal of Corellian Spike is to get to a hand total closest to 0 as possible. The deck you need has 62 cards. There are 30 positive green cards and 30 negative red cards. Then there are 2 0 value cards that look like this, and they are called Cylops. Because there are the same number of negative and positive cards in the deck, it's fairly easy to get a 0 hand. So let me show you what the cards look like. For example, this is a green positive 1. All you need to do is count the pips. This is a negative red 3. You just count the 3 triangles on it. Counting the pips works really well for the numbers 1 through 6, but the face cards 7, 8, 9, and 10 are a little trickier, but I've got a tip for you. 7s are spiky. 8s look like the Imperial cog, so Empire 8. 9 of hearts, and square 10s. So this is a green positive spiky 7, red negative Empire 8, positive green 9 of hearts, and negative red square 10. Before we even play, we need to pay our antes. In Spike, there are 2 pots that we play with. We play with the hand pot and the sabacc pot. We're gonna play 2 antes into each of them. But before we even do that, let's go over our credits. So to keep it super simple, we're gonna play with increments of bronze equals 1, silver equals 5, and gold equals 10. So I'm gonna place 2 of my bronze credits, 1 in the hand pot and 1 in the sabacc pot. You will do the same. The hand pot is won by whoever has the best hand at the end of the game. The sabacc pot is won if the person who wins at the end of the game has a 0 hand. So if you win with a 0 hand, you get both pots. So to start the game, let's deal out 2 cards to each player. And then we have our draw pile, and we put up 1 card to be our discard pile for a face-up card. In Spike, there are 3 rounds. At the end of those 3 rounds, we reveal hands and we see who wins. In each round, there are 3 phases. The first phase is the card phase, where we make our hand better. The second phase is betting, and the third phase involves the dice. During the card phase, every player has 3 options. You can stand if you've got a good hand or you want to bluff, stand and do nothing, or you can draw from the draw pile, or you can swap by discarding one of your cards and then drawing from the draw pile or the top face-up discard pile. The player left of the dealer gets to go first, so that's you. So you have a negative 10 and a positive 1. Not close to 0, is that? So let's see what we can do for you. There's a negative 10 face up right here. That's not gonna help. So let's actually just draw for you. So you drew a negative 6. So now you have a negative 15 hand. But there's 2 more phases that we can work on this. We're good. Now my turn. And I am going to draw a card. Next is the betting phase. Player to the left of the dealer gets to go first, and you have 3 options. First, you can check, which means do nothing, or you can bet by placing money as a wager, or you can junk, which means fold. So because you have that negative 15, that's not a very good hand, let's just have you check first off. The next players have similar options. They can check if the previous players checked, they can bet if the previous players checked, or they can call, which means match the bet the previous player placed. They can raise the bet the previous player placed, or they can junk. I'm actually going to bet, and so I'm going to place 1 of my credits into the hand pot and make my bet. Now, my betting phase is over, and it goes back to you. You checked, I bet. So now you need to match my bet by calling, or you can raise again, or you can fold. So let's just have you call my bet by placing 1 of your bronze credits into the pot. Now that betting phase is over. We go on to the dice phase. These dice have 6 different symbols on them. If I roll the dice and the symbols match, we have to discard our hand and get a new hand equal to the amount of cards that we discarded. No match. Now we're on round 2, and we do this again. We do card phase, betting, and then dice. So card phase begins with you. Remember, you've got that negative 15. So we're going to swap with the draw pile. Let's do that highest number. So we're gonna swap your 10, put discard that first and then draw a card. So now you have a -7. A lot better than -15, but still not that great. Then my turn, and I am just going to draw. Now we're on the betting phase again. Let's say you want to bluff, making it seem like you've got a good hand. So you're going to bet instead of check. So you could bet another 1, or let's maybe even say you're going to bet a 5. Now it's my turn, and I can call that by matching it, raise it, or fold. I'll call. Now we're on our dice phase again. Roll the dice, and there's a match. So now I have 4 cards, you have 3, so we discard our cards, and it needs to be underneath the top face-up card that was already there. Then we are dealt out the number of cards that we discarded. So you have 3, and I have 4. Let's see what you've got. You have a -9, and I do not have a good hand, but I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to have a bad poker face. Okay, so now we are on our last round. We do our last round of cards, betting, and dice, and then we see who wins. So card phase begins with you. So you have your -9. So let's swap out. Let's trade your 7 card by discarding that and drawing a new card. And look at that. That's a pretty good hand. That's a -1. Pretty good. My turn. I'm going to discard 1 and draw 1. Now we're on the betting phase. Now you've got a decently good hand and it's the last round. Now's the time to go big. So I would probably, let's say you bet another 5. At this point, I would actually just fold. I don't have a good hand. So I would just fold, but for the sake of the gameplay, I'm gonna call your bet. Now, dice phase. We roll the dice one last time. If the symbols match, we have to get a new hand again. No match. Okay, now we reveal hands and we see who wins. Okay, so you had your -1, and I actually have a +15. That last dice roll did me in. So who wins? The person closest to 0, and that would be you with that -1. So congratulations, you win. But do you win both pots? No, because this sabacc pot is only won by somebody who has a 0 hand. But you do get a pretty decent sized pot right here. So you would put all that back into your pile, and then we would place new antes, deal 2 cards, and play a new hand. Now, what if we both had 0s? What happens then? Also, there are 11 specialty hands in Spike, kind of similar to the different hands that are available in poker. All ranked hands must equal 0. The best hand of the game is called pure sabacc, that's 2 Cylops. The second is called full sabacc, +10, +10, -10, -10, and a Cylop. Number 3, fleet, 4 of a kind, Cylop. Number 4, yeehaw, 1 pair and a Cylop. Number 5, Rylette, 3 of a kind, 1 pair. Number 6, Squadron, 4 of a kind. Number 7, Gee Whiz, which is positive or negative 1 through 4, and then a corresponding 10. Number 8, Straight Chiron, run of 4 cards. Number 9 is Bantha's Wild, 3 of a kind. Number 10, Rule of 2, which is 2 pairs. Number 11 is Sabacc with 1 pair. For example, here is a +1 and here is a -1. It's good to note that a pair is just 2 numbers of the same absolute value away from 0, be negative or positive. For example, this is considered a sabacc with 1 pair. I have 2 +2s, which would equal 4, but because I add a -4 with it, now my hand equals 0 and it is a sabacc with 1 pair. This also applies to yeehaw and rule of 2. Now, all that being said, most of those 11 hands are near impossible to get. So when I'm teaching beginners, I simplify the hand rankings. We play with pure sabacc, yeehaw, rule of 2, and sabacc pair. What if there are 2 ranked hands that are tying? Well, that's when the lower integer wins. So for example, I have 2 hands that are rule of 2. Let's see which one wins. This hand has a pair of 9s and a pair of 4s. This hand has a pair of 3s, a pair of 5s, and then a 6 to offset those pair of 3s. So, which hand has the lowest integer? This hand's lowest integer were 4s. This hand's lowest integer is 3s. So, this hand wins. Let's go over tiebreakers for hands that equal 0. The first tiebreaker is whoever has the most cards in their hand. The second tiebreaker is the highest positive sum of your hand. The third tiebreaker is the highest single positive card. Now let's go over some examples. Here we have two pairs. Usually it would be the lowest pair wins, but they both have a pair of 2 in it. There's 2 and there's 2. So who wins? Let's go through the tiebreakers. The first tiebreaker is whoever has the most cards. So this hand would win. It has 3 cards versus a 2-card pair. Let's move on to the second example of a tie. So I have 2 hands here. This hand has a 7 and 2 negative cards, and this hand has a -8 and 2 positive cards. So they both equal 0, but which one wins? The first tiebreaker was whoever has the most cards. They both have 3 cards. So let's go on to the next tiebreaker. Number 2 tiebreaker is the highest positive sum. So for example, the highest positive sum of this hand would be the 7. The highest positive sum here would be the 5 and the 3 added, so that would be an 8. So this hand would win because it has the highest positive sum of 8 versus the 7. Let's do one more example. So in this hand, we have a positive 8 with 2 negative cards equals out to a 0. This hand, we have a -8 with 2 positive cards that equals to 0. So who wins? First tiebreaker is whoever has the most cards. They both have 3 again, okay? Now the second one was the highest positive sum. So for this hand, that would be an 8. And for this hand, it would be the 5 plus 3, so also an 8. So they still tie. The third tiebreaker is the highest positive single value card. So for this one, it would be the 5. In this hand, it would be the 8. So which hand wins? This hand, because it has the highest positive single value card. Now, what if neither of us have 0, but we still tie? That's called a null rec. To determine who wins a null rec, you go in first, whoever's closest to 0, and then second, the positive beats the negative. And then it goes into the other tiebreakers, which are first, most cards, then highest positive sum, and then the highest single value card. So here's 2 examples for you. This hand is a positive 2. This hand is a -3. Which one wins? Well, the positive 2 is closer to 0 than the -3. So this hand wins. Here's one more example for you. This one is a positive 2, and this one is a -2. Which hand wins? Well, we first go to closest to 0. Positive 2 and -2 are the same distance apart. So we go to our second tiebreaker, which is positive beats negative. So a positive 2 would beat a -2. And if there's still ties after this, then it goes back to the other tiebreakers of most cards, and then the highest positive sum and the highest single value card. Then after all that, if there's still a tie, what happens then? Well, then it goes into a single blind draw. Each player would draw a card, and whoever is closest to 0 wins. So for example, you drew a 1, therefore you win, because I drew a 3, which is higher. Now, let's talk strategy. Because the deck balances out, it's pretty easy to get a 0 hand. So if you don't have a 0 hand and you suspect other players do, it's a good strategy to fold and survive to play another game. Next, drawing more cards actually gives you more options and increases your probability of having a good hand. In fact, some even consider the Psylop a junk card because it doesn't add or subtract to their hand, it just takes up space. Every card you draw, every bet you make gives your opponents information about what you have. Be aware of the actions you and others take. It's bold to claim a yeehaw when somebody already has a Psylop in their hand. It's hard to bluff a low pair when you've been swapping cards with the discard and there haven't been any low cards up. Here's some strategy with betting. If you've got a good hand and you're wanting to milk money from other players, it's probably not wise to bet a lot on the first round. Usually that scares other players away and then you don't have a chance to win more money. Instead, you should check or place a minimal bet to keep others in the game. Alternatively, you could place a really high bet that scares the other players into folding. That way you buy the pot and you don't even have to reveal your hand. Obviously, this could backfire if another player is feeling really bold, so just be aware and watch your players. Thanks so much for playing with me. If you want to find other people to play with, go to outerrimsabaccleague.com. There's a community there full of people around the world who love to play Sabacc. You can download rules for Corellian Spike at hyperspaceprops.com/Sabacc. While there's also rules for the other variants of Sabacc like Traditional, Coruscant Shift, and Kessel. You can also find resources to play the game, like decks, dice, metal credits, playmats, and more. I hope to see you in a game soon. Bye!